Welcome to the North Forge Discovery Series, everybody. My name is Tina Lee. I'm the Marketing and Events Specialist here at North Forge. Today's webinar, we'll be discussing how to prioritize and plan the marketing content you've been creating for the past 6 weeks. It is the 7th webinar in our 8-part Discovery Series on content marketing. Before we begin the webinar, we acknowledge that we are virtually meeting on the ancestral lands of Treaty 1 territory, the traditional gathering place of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. For those of you who are new to our webinars, North Forge is the innovation partner of the province of Manitoba and an incubator accelerator supporting the growth of Canadian science-based, technology-enabled, and advanced manufacturing startups from the ideation stage all the way through to acceleration. We fuel Manitoba's innovation economy, providing entrepreneurs with industry-leading mentors, award-winning growth coaches, and rockstar subject matter experts in our new 4-stage Founders Program. North Forge also has North America's largest nonprofit, publicly accessible fabrication lab located in Winnipeg's Exchange District. It has in excess of $3 million of advanced manufacturing equipment that has helped more than 3,000 entrepreneurs develop over 7,500 prototypes since 2011. The North Forge Discovery Series are free events that we host in conjunction with promotion of our Founders Program. If you have a business idea and would like to find out more about our Founders Program, please visit our website or reach out to our Program and Communications Manager, Krista Kowalik, and I'll place her contact information in the website in the chat shortly. With that, I'd like to welcome Kevin Gordon, founder of Mimi and Director of Marketing for TechBlocks. Kevin was born in technology and raised in marketing. His 20+ years experience include a unique blend of technical and marketing experience, which has allowed Kevin to lead a team of high-performing developers and system administrators to build integrated omnichannel marketing and sales technology platforms that are currently being used in retail stores across Canada and the USA. And now, Kevin, the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Tina. So everyone, welcome to day 7 of our program. As originally mentioned, the intent was to make this an 8-part series. I think today, if everything goes well, we'll be able to wrap up the core content of what we came here to learn. And then the session on Thursday will be more of an office hours style session where you can come and ask me specific questions about your business or unique challenges that you are seeing in your space. And we can talk through what those content marketing ideas or solutions look like for you. So with that, today we're going to be talking about developing and prioritizing your content. So there's a little bit of psychology that goes into this, which we'll talk about. And then we're going to review the templates as well of how you can, so in day 3 or lesson 3, we would have shared, the tracking thing of here are the topics that you're writing down through lessons 3 through 6. And then today I'm going to give you the rest of the template so you can actually use it to prioritize your content. So first, we're just going to do a little bit of a recap like we have in the other sessions. So early on, we talked about when you're thinking of your content, think video first. Even though you might end up just doing static content or written content like blogs, you should always think about how I can turn my content into video. As humans, most of us are very visual learners. We have 2 eyes for a reason. We're able to see in the colors we can see for a reason. We're very visual. We like to see things. Now, again, that's not for everyone, and it's not always practical to make a video about something, but whenever possible, start with a video, and then use your video as a reference to create your static assets. So social media, shareables, things like that. Use the video scripts to create your platform copy, and then use that to create shareable snippets. Interchangeably, you could probably do platform copy like a blog first and then turn the blog into a video. But you can go either way and then tie things together. But always think of how you would display the content as a video. We talked about the 12 types of content that the Forbes Business Council recommends creating. And again, that's anything that's helpful, relevant, and easy to digest, problem solving, success stories, content that answers questions, is shareable, purpose-built, topics that are actively being searched for, engaging your readers, provocative, actionable, and visual, and that position us as a thought leader. Again, the whole reason why you're doing content marketing is because you want to get something out of it. And that ultimately is you want to get people to pay you for your product or service. So positioning you as a thought leader is ultimately your goal, which drives them to your website organically, which then lets them learn who you are. And eventually, if they have a need for your service, they will hire you. We talked that emotions sell, not logic. So we talked about these 10 items here: fear, guilt, trust, value, belonging, time, trend-setting, leadership, instant gratification, and competition. When you start developing your content, keep in mind of these triggers. How you write and structure your article should be based on one or more of these emotional triggers that you think is most relevant for your audience. Now, in a lot of cases, you should have at least a general idea of why somebody would hire you. So using those emotional triggers, again, so using an example for me, I'm a newer dad. My son is going to be turning 1 next week. I might have, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, you should get a will, my fear is I don't want to, die without leaving my wife and son protected. Charities will use things as guilt. If you don't donate $30, this child in a developing nation will go hungry and die. Right. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can make people feel like that they're a leadership or that they're in a leadership position, that they belong to something. So using your emotional triggers. We reviewed the problem life cycle. So again, this is outside of the awareness, consideration, decision, raving fan outer layer. We start with the problem research. They know that there's an issue, but they don't know what's causing it. They go into the solution mode and they now know what their problem is and they're trying to find a solution for it. Then they want to know who can help them. Then after they decide to go with you, it's your job to keep them on the hook and feel comfortable until that valley of death ends where the person feels comfortable. We used some examples last week last week where, for a fitness center, for example, the average gym membership is ended after 6 months. 50% of gym memberships are ended before 6 months. So their onboarding phase would be 6 months because you want to get them over that transition period. And then, of course, ongoing support is what you do to continue to show value and to stop the attrition and keep people on your network. So when we're thinking of content creation, it's important to think of emotional words versus rational words. Now, this may seem counterintuitive to what we think. The vast majority of people hate emotionally charged content. And we all see it online. News articles are hyper sensationalized, even though their content is garbage. And they do that on purpose. So an example is a newspaper in the US did a test where for an entire day, they only published positive headlines. Their viewership dropped 63%. Because as human nature, we actually want things to be more negative. We're attracted to negativity more than we're attracted to positiveness. So when you think of the words on the left there, additionally, there's more. Concerned, worries, difficult, tough, immediately, right now. So you're creating a sense of urgency and you're creating a sense of panic or emotion by using strongly charged words. It's also interesting to note that headlines that are happy or positive get more shares but less clicks. Negative headlines get more clicks but less shares. So when you're creating your content, you need to think about, are you trying to get brand awareness? So are you trying to get people to share your content so more people become aware of who you are? Or are you trying to get them to take action, by which case you use negative headlines so they click through to your website? So and you can do that by just changing the wording a little bit. So here's some examples. Tips to improve your golf game. It's positive. 5 worst mistakes you can make putting. Negative. How to boost student engagement. Positive. Signs your campus culture is sick. Negative. How to improve your energy. Positive. When you should see a doctor about low energy. Negative. 5 tips for a fair divorce settlement. Positive. 5 tips to stop your ex from screwing you during a divorce. Negative, right? So you can see how the different headlines play out in terms of getting people attracted to your content. We also know that headlines that have numbers in them typically perform better than content that doesn't have numbers in them. And so this actually, there's a term, if anybody's taken public relations or communications or has been involved with the media, there's a saying that they use: if it bleeds, it leads. So negative content always leads. 90% of news content is negative. We mentioned that website lost 66% of its readers when it only published positive stories. And stories with bad news headlines catch 30% more attention. And I've got a whole list of other statistics like this, but keep in mind that unfortunately, for as much as we want to be proactive marketers and we want to do the right thing and be happy and positive, it doesn't always work out the way you think it will, because it's just not engaging to people. And so we should be thinking a little bit more negatively in what we can do to create a sense of fear in the people. So an adjunct professor from the University of Arizona in psychology put together a list of basically 10 things you should be looking at when you're creating copywriting. So again, we should be thinking video first, but this plays really well into even just writing, into video, into graphic design. It's all about the psychology of getting the reader or the viewer to do what you want. And the first thing they recommend doing is making sure you're creating a compelling hook. So we'll talk about what that looks like, and we'll actually go into some of these details a bit more, but build a compelling hook. Use narrative in the conversation to include people. So an example of that could be, sorry, just give me a sec here. I'm just switching my notes screen. So when you're saying something like use our top of the line product to improve your productivity in 30 days, you're making it about us. So if you change the wording to you can improve your productivity in the next 30 days, you're making it about them. So it's changing I and we to you and your. You can use empathy to build your relationships as well. So an example of that is New Year's is a perfect time for this. You know, people go to the gym, they start going hard, they see some immediate gains, they start losing weight, and then they fall off the wagon and they start going back to the old habits. So you could have a communication around, or a line around, you know, we all hate looking at the scale and finding that we gained our weight back. You're building that relationship because we feel the same way you do. So in example 2, you want to make it about them. You can maintain your weight loss or maintain the gains you made at the gym by following our 5 simple steps. We feel the same way you do, that it's demoralizing or whatever it might be if you go to the gym and you start seeing the weight coming back on. So it's about creating a little bit of empathy. Feelings are also very important. So you can use power words and to create a feeling. So one of them is like imagine. Imagine you go to the car dealership and you have this experience, right? So as soon as you say imagine, it allows them to start fantasizing about the world you're talking about. So and that goes into a happy place sort of story. They also found that Harvard psychology professors found that the word because is very disarming to somebody. So if you add the word because into a sentence, everything that follows that word becomes less threatening, because the user or the reader or the listener just assumes that the 2 clauses or the 2 things you're talking about are related. And the second half is just a logical extension of the first. What if statements. So again, allowing somebody to fantasize. What if you could work fewer hours and get paid more? What if you could get a better night's sleep? So you could tie in the what ifs and the imagines. What if you could go to bed tonight and feel better tomorrow? Imagine this: you get into bed and you're lying on this nice comfy mattress and you've got this new pillow that cradles your head and you feel weightless between your sheets. So you kind of tie those 2 together, and you tie in the emotion of what if with the imagination of what could happen. There's also a lot of exclusive words or urgency words we can use, and I can send out a list of what those look like, but using words that, like failure, you don't want to fail, or save and win big, or using caring words like family and dream and health. just the words we choose really makes a difference. Storytelling is a big thing. The best salespeople are storytellers. So if you can tell a story around your brand or your product or your service, people will be more likely to listen. Prime the person by using micro-affirming statements in your content. So these are, a micro question could be, do you want to have enough money to retire? Somebody's going to say, yes, of course I want to have enough money to retire. Then you can say, well, if I said that to have enough money to retire means you'd only have to put away $3 a day into a savings account, is $3 unreasonable to you? Well, no, it's not. So you're getting those micro yeses. And then you can say, and what if I told you would you want to retire? If I could tell you could retire at age 55, is that something you would like? And of course, the person will be like, yeah, of course I want to retire by age 55. That's the golden dream. So you build these micro yeses into your content, whether you're talking to somebody one-on-one or whether you're writing content or creating a video. You can ask those almost rhetorical questions of the viewer to get them primed for that ultimate yes. You could also create themes around your content. So 2 themes in particular is the devil's advocate. I love playing the devil's advocate. I'll always call somebody out or call a solution out or a product out on, what if it was the opposite? What if you were the bad guy versus the good guy? And what, kind of played around that. So, you're probably worried about this, or, have you thought about that? Another sales tactic that people use is the problem, agitate, and solve methodology. And that's, identify the user's problem. You wake up tired every morning, and then you stab them a couple times and say, yeah, it's because you're fat, man. You got to lose some weight. You got to take off some of this. That's why you're always tired. So you kind of like jab it into them and make them feel worse about their problem. And then you give them a solution. Now, keep in mind, this isn't the right model for everybody. It depends on what you're doing, but these models work. Focus on the solution, not your features. So don't try to make your products or your solutions features fit a customer's needs. Focus on what the solution will be. Your system might be faster if you make computer software. Well, faster is great, but what's the solution? And that goes back to the get more done in less time, frees up their time, which is an emotional trigger. When you're creating your content, focus on space. People hate big walls of text, so use short sentences and statements and keep your paragraphs to a minimum. So it's really hard to comprehend this. Like when we were all in school, you'd write these big essays and you have paragraphs that were, 10 lines long for your thesis work. People don't want to read that. So, they recommend keeping your paragraphs at maybe 2 to 3 sentences on average, 5 sentences at the high end, but keep them short. And of course, create a sense of urgency or a call to action, like don't use generic call to actions like learn more. Instead, say things like, you can increase your profitability, or you can increase your savings account, or you can lose 50 pounds in the next 5 months if you act now. So by creating a sense of urgency tied back to an actual tangible result, you're more likely to get the users clicking through for you and wanting to engage with your business. So when we're talking about compelling hooks, I purposely broke this one out because compelling hooks is basically how you get somebody interested in what you're talking about. And so when we're thinking of a compelling hook, this again goes right to the news, right? They're all about the startling statements or the shocking news. And that's okay. So for example, in Mimi, we just found it came across an FTC report that showed that Americans lost $770 million to online fraud from social media, dating site, and online finance fraud last year. So I'm in the process of writing an article about this, but my headline will be something along the lines of Americans lost $770 million last year on social media. That is shocking. You could ask a rhetorical question. So you could say something like, Do you really want that extra spoon or that extra plate of dessert at dinner? No, probably not. Use an inspirational quote or give us some sort of anecdotal memoir or memory. So you really want to give them that hook to draw them in. And as you're developing your content within your content framework itself, you want to continue to build on the story, right? A lot of times when people are reading stories, they get bored partway through because you're not giving them enticing to the next hook or the next compelling reason to keep reading. Some of the YouTube channels I watch that do this very well. One is called Vsauce, Vsauce. Does like psychology, he does like physics, he does thought leadership, but he'll always propose a question at the start of the video that he won't answer until the end of the video. So he might say, an example of this is he did a video on what would happen if you could drill a hole through the center of the earth and you jumped into that hole, what would happen? Well, then he basically parks that and then starts talking about physics. And could you actually dig a hole to the center of the earth? And what would that take? And then you learn about that. And then he talks about what would happen if you jumped through the hole. And, talks about you'd probably die from the heat. Okay, so let's say you didn't die from the heat. What would then happen next? And so he continues to build on his story until he circles back at the end to answer the question of what would happen if you could actually jump through to the center of the earth. And the answer ends up being you would just come out the other end and you would be able to just like take a step and walk away. And so like he's a very good storyteller. Linus Tech Tips out of Victoria does the same thing. He comes in with a very compelling hook, builds on something, and then keeps you going. So it's about creating a flow of content from your hook into like those sub hooks that people want to either keep reading, keep watching, or keep talking to you. So where to start? There's a lot of places you could start, but what are the emotional triggers of your persona? And again, if you don't know what these are, just do some digging around and understand like why are people using your service today or your product today, and then reverse as to what those emotional triggers could be. What are your goals of your content? And again, stages of the buyer's journey. Are you looking for them to make a purchase decision today? Do you want them to refer you to somebody else? Are you just providing entertaining content to get them on your website? What is that goal? And who is the target audience? Right? This is what this whole thing is about, is marrying the right content for the right stage of the buyer's journey for the right audience. Also keep in mind not to use acronyms or jargon. You should be trying to write your content for about a grade 10 to grade 12 education at the highest level. When you think of politicians and as intelligent people, when we see political speeches, you might have noticed that they always talk down. Politicians talk at about a grade 6 level intentionally to make sure they don't alienate people. You don't necessarily want to talk at a grade 6 level to your audience, but keep in mind that if you're talking at a doctorate level or a grad student level, you're going to alienate a large chunk of your audience, even if they're grad students. Don't use acronyms or industry jargon. If you have to use an acronym, spell it out and define what that means if you're going to continue to use it. Because as soon as somebody feels alienated, they're going to walk away and they're going to go do something else. Or they're going to have to pull out their dictionary to find out what you're talking about, which then takes them off of your site. When we're developing content, we should be developing content with SEO in mind. Google is the #1 search engine in the world. We all know that. But Google also recommends you write for people, not for Google, right? So don't do keyword stuffing. Don't do these articles that make absolutely no sense just to get people on your site, because Google's AI is smart enough to know when an article is written for them and not written for people. That also means you need to keep up on what Google's looking for. And there's plenty of websites that can help you with that. Search Engine Land, SEMrush, Moz.com. Google's own blog will tell you what they're looking for. Research long tail keywords that follow a natural language syntax. So when you go to Google, you go back 20 years and you go to Google and you type in Chinese restaurants, Winnipeg. Now you go to Google and you type in Chinese restaurants near me, Or you can type in, how long does it take to get from Winnipeg to Vancouver? Or I go to Google and I type in flights from Winnipeg to Tampa on February 20th. And Google brings up all the flights on February 20th from Winnipeg to Tampa. So think of those long tail keywords for your own business. And it could be, oh, and Google, there we go. Now Google actually just popped up on my phone with all the flights from Winnipeg to Tampa on February 20th. And so when you're thinking of your own vertical, it could be, when we think of, say, the retail space, for example, a long tail keyword could be somebody Googling the name of a store in your mall and their hours. So, and I have no idea what stores are over there, but it could be something like, what are the Walmart hours at the St. Vital Center Mall? Or, pick up locations for that. Or if you're in health, medical, or we'll use the fitness example. What's the best way to lose 10 pounds? It's long tail. People might type in, how do I lose weight? But somebody's not going to type in lose weight. So you want to create your headlines and your long tail keywords along what people would actually be saying conversationally and typing into Google as if they're searching for it. So pretend that you're asking your Google Assistant for something and phrase it that way. Try to aim for a minimum of 1,000 words per page. The old guideline used to be pages should have a minimum of 500 words. Now Google's looking for a minimum of 1,000 words per article, ideally between 2,000 and 2,500 words per article. But you can't keyword stuff and you can't just create content for the sake of content. It all has to be related to the topic. So if you're writing an article on weight loss and you deviate into, what you had for brunch yesterday with your wife, it's probably not going to resonate well with Google's engine. Similarly, if you're a lawyer and you're writing an article on tips for a successful settlement, if you start talking about other things like corporate law or your personal hobbies, Google is just going to say this is irrelevant content and they're going to stop indexing it. So make sure it's all relevant. For as counterintuitive as this sounds, make sure you're linking to third-party sources to increase your credibility. So if you find something on entrepreneur.com or HubSpot or even Google or Northforge's website or anybody else's website, link to it, because Google will take that as a sign that you're trying to create value and that you know what you're talking about because you're linking to content that's related to your content. When you do that, make sure the link opens in a new window so you don't lose your viewer. Similarly, when you're doing videos, if you're doing video content, you could also put in, if you go to YouTube, you'll see a lot of people put in like the description of their video, links to relevant content that are related to that video. That all helps. And don't just use text. Wherever possible, try to use contextually appropriate graphics and videos within your content. Use your meta content that includes social media tags. So everyone's familiar with the title tag and the description tag. Your title tag should be around 70 to 90 characters. And it's awkward to say where in that number you should be because Google actually doesn't base it off of the number of characters they show. They base it on the width of the number of pixels it takes to show the title. So if you're using letters like O, it takes up more room than using letters like I. So try to keep your titles between 70 and 90 characters and your description at about 160 characters. The Facebook tags and the Twitter tags also have their own guidelines for title and description. So you may have to create 3 different titles and 3 different descriptions for your content, which you should be considering anyway, because somebody who's finding your content on Twitter may be finding it different than somebody who's finding it on Facebook. So just make sure that your title tags and your description tags are all set up. Using your headlines in a logical manner. So when you're creating your content, use headings. So when you're typing in Microsoft Word or Apple Pages or Google Docs, create your headings H1, H2, H3, H4. And if you have a thought that is a sub-thought of a parent topic, put in a headline and then have your content below it and keep doing that because that helps teach Google and not only Google, but also the reader that this is related content, but it's a sub-thought. So it helps us to keep everything organized and use your keyword or target phrases within your article. So If your article is 10 ways to get a beach body by summer, your headlines would be, headline one would be, or your first headline would be in your article, here are 10 ways to get a beach body by summer. Or in this article, we're going to talk about 10 ways to get a beach body by summer. And then heading one would be 1, eat better, 2, get more exercise, 3. And so you create those headlines, but you make sure that you're using your keywords within the content, because it helps to build that ties everything together a little bit better. And I think the current goal is to try to have about no more than 5%, like plus or minus around the 5% mark of your content should be using your own keyword to continue, or at least part of your keyword to keep things tied together. When we're thinking of creating videos, 90% of consumers are watching videos with the sound off. That means you need to get captions or subtitles created for every video you're producing. And don't trust Google's auto caption feature. It's absolute garbage. What you can do is hire somebody from, like, say, Upwork.com. I just hired somebody. They charged $3 a minute to transcribe a video for us with accurate subtitles. On a 30-minute video, cost me $90. So it really wasn't the end of the world, but there's a lot of people out there, especially in Eastern Europe, who have very good English comprehension and can transcribe your video for you. So subtitles and captions are a must. Consider the medium that you're producing the video on as well. If the intent is for somebody to watch the video in a Facebook feed, consider making the video square, a 1x1. If they're watching it in like a Facebook Reels or TikTok or Instagram stories, consider 9x16, not 16x9. You want to go tall. Consider how they'll be watching your video. Make sure you're using eye-catching cover art. Don't just use a still frame grab from your video. Create some sort of cover art that talks about that draws their attention. Sorry, I just got a question here from Alex in the chat. Do you recommend that it's just a transcription, proper SRT file, or actually upload burned in captions, or personal preference? I would recommend doing an SRT or one of the other modern formats, because that way you can upload the file to YouTube and Facebook, and the user can choose whether they want their captions to be turned on or off. Through SEO, and this is getting a little bit more advanced, but if you're using schema tags or microdata tags on your website, you can also attach the SRT file to the video, and then that helps Google index what the video is about and be able to draw people in. So I'm not sure if you've ever gone to Google and you type in a search for something, and one of the recommendations is a video. And when you click on the video, it takes you right to the segment of the video that they want you to watch. It's because Google is able to index the video and find the related content and take the user to the time code that matches what they're looking for. So there's a bunch of different formats. SRT is the most common. I think web caption is like the new version that's coming out, but they're all basically the same. It's time code start, time code end, and then the description below it. But SRT files would definitely be the way to go, as opposed to burning them in on the video itself. Give your videos long tail names as well. So when you think of the naming of your video, don't just call it, like, if you're doing a video podcast, don't just call it like episode 1, episode 2. If your episode is on, let's say it's 10 exercises you can do at the office to keep busy, call your video 10 exercises you can do at your desk, or something similar. Or if you're sitting down and interviewing somebody, it could be discussions with Kevin Gordon on content marketing, could be your title. So you just want to give it a little bit of a long tail name. Build a story in your video to keep them on the hook, because you have less than 10 seconds at the start of the video to capture their attention before they move on to something else. So it's really tough to say, right? And it's because users have no attention span anymore. I blame microwaves and Facebook for that kind of thing. But when we think of even the video length that you're creating, longer isn't always better. So when you think of Facebook, for example, if you're doing a Facebook story, the recommendation is to keep the video under 20 seconds long. So keep that in mind. You have 10 seconds to capture their attention, but you've only got 20 seconds to actually tell your story. If you're doing a video that shows up in a Facebook post, you have about 3 minutes. Instagram isn't much better. If you're doing a video as part of an Instagram, like a grid, 60 seconds is where they think your sweet spot should be, and 2 to 5 minutes if you're doing an Instagram TV post. If you're posting on Twitter, you only have 140 seconds to begin with, but the optimal length is 45 seconds. LinkedIn, same sort of thing. Optimal video length when you're doing an ad, like a promoted video on LinkedIn, is under 30 seconds. But you have up to 10 minutes if you're going to do a native video. And then, of course, there's other channels like Pinterest, YouTube. If you're doing an organic YouTube video, keep it under 15 minutes. If you're doing a YouTube video ad, keep it under 12 seconds. And then similarly, TikTok has their own as well. It's about, TikTok videos are, what do they say? TikTok videos should be anywhere between 9 and 15 seconds. So consider the format and consider what your goals are when you're creating your videos, because there's a lot of different formats. There's a lot of different sizes, and you may not necessarily have the budget to edit your video for all of these different channels because it gets expensive to film. But when you think of your framing, when you do your video, like right now I'm off to the third left, but if I were to position myself right in the middle, well, now I can do a square around my head and get do the full width for like a 1x1 for a Facebook. I could do the tall 9x16 for a feed, and I could do a full width for YouTube. So if you're using a video production company, they should be able to help you understand what those ratios should be and understand how to position yourself so that they can chop the video up for those different sizes. So general considerations, again, what are the titles of your content? Consider using a long tail title. If your title gets really long, like if you're going over 70 to 90 seconds, Alex will remember this will be fully well aware of this. When I used to work for Thompson Dorfman Sweatman, one of the North Forge sponsors, I guess now TDS Law is their new formal name. We would have lawyers writing articles whose primary title would be about a sentence in length. So it's like a full story just in the title. And so if you're going to go to that sort of length for a title because you really want to convey a message, consider breaking it up into a subtitle. Here's a primary title. Here's a subtitle that has a little bit more juice to it. Again, what are your meta descriptions? What images would accompany that article or video for social media preview? If you don't specify a preview or a cover image to Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn when you're creating your content on your website, they will just choose an image from your website or a video from your website that they think is best, and it might not be a good fit. So again, if you're using a platform like WordPress, you can install a plugin like Yoast SEO, and I'll just type that into the chat here. There's a whole bunch of different plugins, but Yoast is probably the most well-known. You can install Yoast. You can specify that Facebook image or video. You can specify that Twitter image or video and help make sure that they're representing your content well. And what is that accompanying post, right? So you create this article on your website. Facebook is going to get a preview with a title and a description. Thanks, Tina. Facebook is going to give the title and a preview of the content. But what is the post that's going to go with it? What is a compelling hook or organic message that's going to be attached to it? So there's a lot of different consideration when creating your content, and there's no real right answer as to what is the correct direction as long as you follow these guidelines. If your audience spends a lot of time on TikTok, by all means, create a ton of TikTok content. My audience isn't on TikTok at TechBlocks, so we would never use TikTok. Our audience is primarily on LinkedIn and Twitter, So that's where we focus our energies today. How we compose those messages is typically different from channel to channel. If I'm doing a post on LinkedIn versus a post on Twitter, the messaging is going to be slightly different to appeal to the audience that I'm looking after. Or if I'm sending an email to a client with the link, it's going to be different as well. So before we move on to the template, I just want to ask, are there any questions on the content we reviewed? And if not, I'm going to switch screen. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and switch screens to show you the template and walk you through that. And then you'll get a copy of the template from Tina at the end of the session that contains all the other links and content from today.
Feel free to come off of mute or turn on your camera, and Kevin will be happy to answer your questions.
I have a quick question. Do you repurpose content? Oh, is this working? Okay. Do you repurpose content? And if you do, what's that process look like for like different channels or formats or whatnot?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And you can repurpose your own content over and over again. So when you think of, so two schools of thought on that. One is, if you make a social media post with content on it, what is the half-life of that content? And so half-life refers to at what point after you make a post does 50% of your audience organically see it in their feed? And I can tell you for most social media sites, it's like 10 minutes or less. So if you make a post on your social media, your company's Facebook page, and you get your views and you're posting regularly on Facebook, there's nothing to say you can't repost that same article next week or 2 weeks from now, because the reality is that the people who saw it this week probably won't see it next week. Repurposing content. We've done that at TechBlocks numerous times so an example of an article is, we had an article from our earlier last year that was called How to Prioritize Technical Debt, which is just basically a fancy way of saying you've built your software cheaply to begin with, and now you got to go back and fix it. And so we took that article, we wrote a new version of it that was a little bit longer, took some of the key components from the first one and repurposed it, but then linked the two articles together and said, in a previous art, this article has been updated, go see the new version here. We straight out post the same article on Facebook, on our website as we would on medium.com. And now we're starting to use LinkedIn articles with the LinkedIn newsletter feature. And it's literally a straight copy. Like we're not refactoring it, we're not tweaking it, we're literally posting the same article on a variety of sources to make sure we're maximizing our exposure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You could say, yeah, this article, Why Am I Always Tired, is relevant to people who want to lose weight, boost energy, and bulk up, because if you work out too hard, you might be tired. So then you go, why? When is this content? So you would have identified, again, the stage of the buyer's journey, but now you're going, you know what? This content might actually have a good fit for the problem and maintenance. If you're working out too hard, you might be tired. So you might say, position content of Why Am I Always Tired for later stage as well. Now, who internally is responsible for creating this content? And you could use a RACI model: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. In this case, it's just really simple. I might say, why am I always tired? And I'm going to assign it to, in this case, you might rename operations to personal trainer, and you might change developers to nutritionist. And so you create your internal responsibility. Who's going to create this article? What is a good format for this content to be in? Well, you could do a blog article, a social media post, and you may want to do a video. You could also say maybe. You can be like, yeah, I could, and you might call this a white paper. You could change it to how-to guide, whatever's relevant for you. And you go, this is a maybe. So we're going to put maybe I might do a how-to guide. Where will they look for this content? Well, they can go on our website, social media. If you do something, let's say it's a third-party publication or third-party platform, you might change this to YouTube, might change it to Vimeo, might change it to whatever is relevant to you. So you go, yeah, I'll put it on there. I'm not going to do print, and I'm not going to do a brochure or leave behind. And then you get into the end section here. How easy is it for you to produce this content? 5 is, in this case, the more positive is always higher. So we'll go, yes, this is easy to do. Impact, we'll call it a 3 because helps get people interested, but it's not going to seal that deal. And the cost to produce this, let's call it a 4. It's easy enough. So then the system spits out a priority score. And it's just a formula that does some averaging, but it's a priority of 46. But then if you were to go back and do another, you might say, why hire a personal trainer? And you go, same thing here. So you go, yeses. Whoop. And you go, this is a solution vendor, call it a personal trainer in marketing. You're going to do a video, you're going to do a podcast, you're going to do a blog, you're going to do a post, you're going to do a guide, you're going to do case studies, you're going to publish it everywhere you can. It's really easy for you to do. It's really high impact and costs nothing. And what broke? My formula has broken, and I apologize. I'll send out a new version. This should not be a 1. This should be higher than 46. What did I change here? There we go. So now it's a 76. So this one ranks higher because it impacts more channels and it's easier to produce. So the idea is you go through and you fill all this out, and then you will sit there and you'll take these priority scores and go, okay, which ones have the highest score out of 100? And those are the ones you start with first. They're easy, they're high impact, they're low cost, and you can use them on a variety of channels. And then after you prioritize the content, the next step will be to then actually start writing. And so that's something we're not really going to cover too much in this course, because everybody's in a unique position based on your business and based on your audience. But the methodology is still the same. What are you trying to accomplish with your content? And what is a logical flow? So I'll typically, when I'm creating content, start with a bulleted list, which is, typically you have your intro, you'll have your conclusion, and then in between, what are we going to talk about? So when I created this content workshop, there were 7 lessons. The first lesson was, what is content marketing? The second lesson was personas, problem research, solution research, vendor consideration. So I had each of these 7 courses planned out in terms of, here are the topics I want to talk about. And then I went in and I nested that further and said, okay, if I'm going to be talking about personas, what do I want the attendees to learn? And then I, bulleted out what I wanted to learn in personas. And then I actually started writing the content. So by putting in a little bit of planning effort into your content, makes it really easy to understand what your logical flow will be and the sections you need filled out. In other cases, sometimes you might just go, hey, I've got a brilliant idea, and you're going to start writing. By all means, you can do that as well. You don't necessarily always need to go through a formal planning process, but the formal planning process allows you to just be a little bit more intentional with how you're planning your content and the flow and the audiences, especially when you're keeping in mind who your personas are. So any questions on this template? Yeah, so this template will be being shared by Tina after this lesson, so you can go ahead and start poking through it. So we are coming to the end of the course, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who has attended the last seven classes that we've done. I really appreciate everybody jumping on with us. And I'm just going to change my sharing here for a sec. So as mentioned, the Thursday lesson or the Thursday session will be more of an office hour. So if you have very specific questions about your use case or content development, or you're looking for specific resources for transcription or podcast producers, I've got people that help me with like podcast production. I've got people who do the transcription. I've got freelance graphic designers. If you need specific resources, I'm happy to put you in touch. If you just want to chat more, feel free to come on Thursday as well. And here's a little bit of a shameless plug. We talked earlier about how ratings and reviews are absolutely important for your business. If you learned something from this course, please leave me a recommendation on LinkedIn related to content marketing. Feel free to endorse me on LinkedIn for content marketing and teaching. And of course, if you have any colleagues who should be taking this course as well, I do teach this course in a corporate setting. So if you wanted to, if you have a day job and you're looking to bring this internal, I can do internal workshops for private companies as well, or host another version of this digitally. But please leave me a recommendation or an endorsement. Refer me out to others, because of course, ratings and reviews help everybody and help boost my credibility as a content marketing teacher. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'm going to open it up to any final questions and give you half an hour back. Well, of course, Tina's going to go first, but we'll give you half an hour back for the day. And then we'll touch base again on Thursday for office hours.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for helping us understand more about how to easily prioritize and plan our marketing campaigns, and for answering everybody's questions. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being a part of the North Forge Discovery Series. Here is a link to all of North Forge upcoming events. Just pop that into the chat. I've mentioned previously how some of you have talked about wanting to stay in touch after the webinar. If you'd like to, and this is totally optional, you can add your info to this document, and I'll make sure that it gets shared with everybody. And like I said in the chat, watch your email for the links to the video and all the references discussed today. We're looking forward to seeing you all for the final free Discovery Series webinar in this content marketing series. We're calling it Questions and Answers. If you have, like Kevin said, if you have any questions about content marketing, the life cycle, this is the perfect opportunity to pick his expert marketing brain to help you in your content marketing journey. If you haven't had a chance to sign up yet, I'll place that link as well in the chat. There you go. And if you have an idea that would help solve a problem in your industry and you'd like to find out more about the Founders Program, contact Krista Kowalik, our Program and Communication Manager, and she'll have a chat with you. And before we wrap up for the day, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Bell MTS, TDS Law, RBCX, Bitspace Development, Princess Auto, Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Manitoba, Boxstall Construction, 6P Marketing, and PCL Construction. And that wraps up our 7th of 8 content marketing webinars. We're looking forward to seeing you all on Thursday, February 3rd for our last webinar in the series. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Take care.